welcome Mr. Roy Haddad, Chairman of RMH Holdings, who will discuss our fourth sector for the day, culture and creative industries.
Hello. It has always been our competitive advantage. The creative and cultural industries effectively is what differentiated us in this region for a very, very long time, for decades. Unfortunately, these days we're under threat. It's being bought by others to compete with us, but let's not worry. The Bank 10 boys, what would they have to do in this presentation? Well, you can ask this question, and rightly so, but it's a $42 billion contribution to the South Korean economy. It's quite extraordinary. And often we understate these industries that are great contributors, not only to their sectors, but across sectors, from fashion to cosmetics to tourism, etc. So much so that actually yesterday they celebrated the Bangtan in South Korea again, and it's called the Bangtan economy. Now, if we think of UNESCO defined the creative and cultural industry, and they are the ultimate guardian of this industry as a whole. It's really 6 sectors, from culture and natural heritage, performance art, visual arts, publishing, interactive media and content creation, design and creative services. And obviously, the subsequent related domains are tourism and performance and sports. The importance of the creative and culture does not touch only this industry. It's the biggest contributor to a country's soft power. And soft power is what drives the nation image, notwithstanding the fact that also it contributes to the economy and to jobs. 72% of consumers worldwide say their purchasing decision is decided and influenced by a country's soft power. So effectively, it affects all of you in this room. And when you think of soft power, we need to determine it a little bit. It works by attraction. It's a culture power versus military power. It's influence versus coercion. And it keeps equity in the country versus immediate effect. Therefore, it has a great influence if we are to attract tourism, if we attract people. Soft power is what creative and the cultural industry will contribute to. And more importantly, and it's very interesting statistic, 70% of FDI, foreign direct investment, goes to the top 20 nation brands in the world. And it acts holistically. And when you think of France, it's a luxury brand. When you think of America, it's Hollywood, the music, etc. CCI is one of the most sizable economy in the world. It represents 6.1% of the total GDP. It's a $2 trillion industry. And in the last 10 years, or from 2010 to 2020, it grew by around 9% per annum as an exchange of exports. But most importantly, it employs youth. It's the highest employer of youth of any industry. And we're a useful country, but the message is clear. And furthermore, it has the highest added value because it's an economy of idea. The bank tank is a perfect example. We've let this go to waste in our country. Think of Fayrouz, what a great contributor to the economy she was and she still is. We have the assets. However, it represents around 5% of our GDP. Could we index it to the global average, which means it's a 25% growth? The opportunities are very vast. Unfortunately, since the crisis, we've lost $1.2 billion in this industry because we had structural issues. Artists and employees are badly covered in terms of social net. We have a poor infrastructure, we all know that. We have an economic challenge to keep the brain drain. And I read recently that some of our artists now have UAE citizenship. That's very dangerous. We should not allow this to happen. We have a lack of incentive to start up. We have antiquated laws for a very creative industry. There is a total dichotomy between our laws and what we're trying to achieve. And finally, there are government challenges. We're not supporting enough the education asset. The conservatoire is in a dire situation. And the Ministry of Culture takes only 0.25% of our national budget, where the global average is 1%. But that's a wake-up call for all of us. But it's still a very lucrative export business. $510 million in 2021. It's probably the only industry where the balance of trade is positive. We were at 2.3 in 2015. Let's try and get back to that. And how can we get back to that? Because it can contribute to 20% of our workforce, create 20% jobs. 300,000 jobs are not a small word. But to improve the regulatory and the legislative, fiscal, and labor framework is necessary for CCI. First lesson, let's stop working in silos. We need to create a collaborative model between education, culture, economy, and tourism to drive CCI. Silos doesn't work in this case. We need to fund culture at the right level. We need education 4.0. We need the fiscal incentive for artists to stay here. We need to cover the artist status in terms of social net and so on, and adapt proper intellectual property laws, basically aligned to The Hague and the Madrid agreements. Otherwise, we're going nowhere. But to summarize it all, 3 main initiatives: education and training, preserving our assets and have a repository for all these assets and protect them, and build the right infrastructure and regulatory framework for all of that. But the biggest enemy of CCI is censorship. And this we need to be very conscious of. And the biggest driver that we need to protect at all costs is freedom of speech. And that's the only way Lebanon will work. Thank you. Yeah.